Is it easier to recruit at USC than it is in SEC? Stay tight because we're going to be talking about that discussion as well as others on this week's episode. All right, Rick. So we were talking earlier about the fact that we wanted to bring a new discussion into the conversation. So this week on Trojan Conquest Live, we are going to talk about, is it easier for USC to recruit to USC than it is in the SEC? We're also going to talk about a listener brought in a question about what's going to go on with the Notre Dame scheduling. And then we're also going to follow up on our conversation we had about Deuce Robinson's recruitment and now eventual commitment to USC, as well as what's going on with news and notes from the practice. Rick, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing great, Tim. Always good to be with you. Sunday night, 5:00, talking USC football. How was the weekend?
Weekend so far is good, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes the rest of the week. All right. So our first topic we want to talk about is we got Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson is the 6'6", 5-star, we thought, tight end that was picked up by USC. He was highly recruited by a number of schools. Everyone thought he was all Georgia. Then people were talking about maybe Ohio State and Oregon. But in the end, we were able to get our guy. And one thing that was made very clear by Lincoln Riley is he is not being recruited as a tight end. He is being recruited as a wide receiver.
Yeah, that came out on Saturday after practice when he basically said that because of his skill set, he's going to be utilized in a lot of different formations, but he's going to be a wide receiver. And I had my suspicions about that due to his size and the need for a red zone target. Not to say you can't be a red zone target being a tight end, but he's a special athlete. I think with him and Jacoby Lane, another wide receiver recruit from the state of Arizona, he's 6'5", Deuce is 6'6". You're going to have some interesting matchups, and then the speed that we have with Zach Branch and Mekhi Lemon, the two new other wide receiver recruits, and the host of other wide receivers we have on the roster. It's going to be a pretty special combination for Lincoln Riley to work with.
And in the interview, it came out very clear some of the advantages that USC had in the recruitment of Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson, as we know, is a 2-star athlete. He will be still deciding later on based on his draft stock at the beginning of July is when the Major League Baseball draft is. He is a huge baseball player. He grew up wanting to play baseball as well as football. But one thing that helped out USC is the fact that there was also a guy that was a dual sport stud in Kyler Murray over at Oklahoma. And it was a little bit of a conversation that Lincoln Riley had with the media regarding the fact that they learned through working with Kyler Murray. They made a number of mistakes when they were trying to balance, making sure that, he's this dual sport athlete that could go either direction. And he wanted to make it clear, though, that he does now they've kind of shored up the system. He feels very confident that he can promote him in both sports, that USC will be a great spot for him to work on both sports at the same time.
Yeah. And, if you tuned into our special Thursday episode right after Deuce made his commitment to USC, tune into on the Voice of College Football, we talked about, we didn't really know what was going to happen with Deuce, as you mentioned, 2-sport athlete with the pending Major League Baseball draft. But Lincoln Riley, after practice on Saturday, had mentioned that Deuce will be playing football at USC, so that clears some things up. And as you mentioned, Tim, they have a very comfortable feeling working with Kyler Murray before, and they have a relationship with the USC baseball coach Andy Stankiewicz because Austin Overn from Foothill High School in Orange County, he's their starting center fielder. He also plays wide receiver as a walk on at USC. So they have that relationship they've built with Andy, the head coach. And the one thing that also came out was Lincoln Riley's been recruiting Deuce Robinson for 4 years, multiple years. And so he has a great belief in his athletic ability and the ability to be a two-sport athlete, and at the end of the day, make the best decision for his future. So it's great to hear Lincoln Riley talk about those very important kind of details that nobody really knew. We were kind of speculating, but it's good to hear that he'll be suiting up for the Cardinal and Gold come this fall.
Yeah, Stankiewicz is doing a great job with the baseball team. It's a great thing you brought up the fact that you have Overn. Congratulations to Overn. He actually just tied the all-time single-season triples record with 10 on the season, and the triple that's in 10 games, and out of 20, they're not even halfway through the season, and this guy has already tied the record. I'm pretty sure he's going to tie it or beat it and add on to it.
Yeah, and they just beat Utah 4-0 on Friday night, and they beat Utah again yesterday 10-0. So I know we get a lot of flack from our Utah fans about beating us 2 years in a row. Well, back-to-back shutouts in baseball. There you go.
Yeah. So congratulations, USC, Lincoln Riley, and Deuce. Welcome to the family. And then, so that brings up, we keep hearing a lot about the fact that, about what are we doing on defense? What's the issue? We get a lot of these offensive guys, whether he's going to play tight end or wide receiver, it's still not, people aren't satisfied with who we have on defense, which is, kind of a shame because they did a pretty darn good job on defense this year, pulling in transfers like Mason Cobb, right? Bringing him in to shore up the linebacking group. In the past, we brought in Eric Gentry, Jacoby Covington. And then this year, they're continue to bring in guys through the portal that, like big one, like Anthony Lucas. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. This team is built on the recruiting as well as the ability to bring them in through the transfer portal. But really, the recruiting, they have brought in some great recruiting. Wait till you guys see how big Sam Green is. This dude's like a fire plug, right? Braylon Shelby is going to be flashing. They run tons of guy, PV, and I'm probably forgetting a bunch of players as well. But this defense is already looking great. If you haven't looked at the Southern California landscape for recruiting this year, I'm just flashing. There's some of them. This isn't all of them, but these are all Southern California prospects. I was talking with Rick earlier. Most of them are either Mater Dei or at St. John Bosco, but we have at Los Alamitos. Southern California this year is going to be a great place for defensive players.
Yeah, let's take a look at you. You were talking about recruiting, and we just finished 2023. Now it's on to 2024. And this is the year that's going to give us a better indication of what's happening with USC football. We all know what USC championship football looks like, and it starts with the defense. And, Lincoln Riley obviously is an offensive-minded coach, and he brought over a number of five-star recruits out of that small first class, basically a month after he got here, with Malachi Nelson and had those guys committed. And he brought over Caleb Williams to the transfer portal. This class, he has majority of it, 2/3 is offensive-minded in this 2023 recruiting class. So we move to 2024, and there's all the controversy about Alex Grinch. Even within our fan base, a lot of people wanted him gone. Obviously, Lincoln Riley said no, brought in a defensive analyst and Greg Brown, and now all eyes will be on Grinch and the defense and Lincoln Riley. And so let's see where we are with 2024. There is another announcement that's going to be happening. Deuce announced on Thursday. There is a 4-star safety out of Texas, and his name is Aaron Flowers. He's going to be announcing on April 7th. And He's highly recruited. He's the number 10 safety in this year's 2024 class. And he's going to be, he was recently at USC visiting. And, you know, he mentioned one of the reasons why he's visited SC and why this would be a great destination is because of the great wide receivers and who would be practicing against all day in practice. You know, that's a big key for him. And he was quoted as saying he had a visit on March 22nd. And what he had to say about his visit is that Alex Grinch told him that the media was clowning the defense for sure, but he never really pays attention to it because he knows it takes a lot. It wasn't their recruits. They came in and had to bring some guys, and it was tackling. That was a key part of it. Grinch told Flowers that he can turn it around. They already have the offense. They just need some size on defense. And to that, Flowers made the comment, the relationships he's built with the coaches so far has stood out from every other school, and he just wants to change the program and the defense around. And like I said, USC probably has the best wide receivers in college football. So if you go against the best, you can play against anybody. He also went on to say that he FaceTimes with Lincoln Riley a lot, and you can tell that Lincoln Riley's involved in the recruiting of this young man. And it should be noted that the first year, Lincoln Riley had, I think, 600 pages of notes on his iPad of things he had to get right with the program. And in a normal year, you'd have 150 to 200 pages of notes. Well, he's got that taken care of. The infrastructure, the structure, everybody that needed to be hired, which was a lot, that's been taken care of. And so now we move on. You can see he's active in the defense. There was another player that actually visited USC on Friday and was at practice Saturday. And this is a 4-star defensive lineman. I will say that again, a 4-star defensive lineman, because we talk a lot about that. His name is Brandon Davis Swain. He's out of West Bloomfield High School in Michigan. 247 composite has him ranked number 146 nationally, the number 19 defensive lineman, and the number 4 player from Michigan. This young man, April of last year, committed to Notre Dame. He decommitted December 11th of this past year, and USC was one of the schools he said he was going to make a visit to. And like I said, he was here this weekend. And kudos to Coach Sean Nua, because Sean Nua had a relationship with him a couple years ago when Coach Nua was at Michigan coaching the D-line. So you can see the quality of this coaching staff is helping shape future recruiting, and we're going to see it on the defensive side of the ball. Last recruiting cycle, linebacker coach Brian Odom had similar success snagging one of the top linebackers in the class in Tackett Curtis. So these two names bode well. They were recently visited SC in the last couple of weeks, and it'll be interesting to see what the staff does recruiting this year's defensive talent.
Yeah, for sure. I like the fact you brought up Sean Nua's pulling in guys. So remember, he was a defensive line coach at Michigan. And when you're a coach, you make these, you establish relationships also with the local high school coaches as well. But I'm sure he kept in contact all the time that he was working with them. And that pays dividends. And we do have coaches that are from all over the place. So you look at most of the coaching staff that came over with Riley from Oklahoma. While Oklahoma isn't necessarily known as a hotbed for recruiting, the state they probably recruited the most was Texas. And Texas is. And Riley is a Texas guy from Muleshoe, Texas. And he's going to have a lot of relationships there. And we're already seeing the dividends of that, pulling in. We had the two freshman running backs that we're going to hear a lot about. Both came from Texas. And we're going to continue to see that. Because if you look at the breakup of the class this year, we had 10 guys from California, 3 from Arizona, 1 from Nevada, 3 from Texas, 2 from Washington, 2 from the DMV, and 1 from Louisiana. And when you look at that breakup, you kind of see a pattern geographically. You see a pattern geographically where it starts up, up in Washington, slides down through California, Arizona, popping up to Nevada, and then over into Texas. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the recruiting footprint be. That's going to be like our home base pretty much. Now that really we have moved on from, I'm sorry, my Pac-12 friends, but now that we're moving to big time football, and I think this is going to put USC in a different category, especially as far as coverage, playing on Fox, getting all the numbers and all the views. When we start playing teams like Ohio State and Michigan, along with Notre Dame, switching off between Ohio State and Michigan every year, and having Notre Dame every single year, there'd be a lot of big time games on television, and players want to play in front of TV. So it's going to put us in a different category. Sure, Uncle Phil can throw as much cash at these guys as he wants, but these kids are going to have plenty of money and plenty of exposure for NIL playing at USC, which a lot of the Pac-12 schools and anything pretty much, west of Texas is not going to be able to provide for them. USC can do that, and I'm looking forward to it. That's why we posed the question at the beginning. I want to say, is it possible that USC is an easier place to recruit to than the SEC? Well, you might say the sheer number of players and 5 stars and freak athletes are in the Southeast. That doesn't mean we don't have them scattered all over the West Coast, because we do. We have a fair share in California and in Texas. And I think that going forward, tapping into these things, and as Rick just said, using the connections they have, like to say in Michigan or throughout the country, over the DMV, Caleb Williams, and his names that carry a lot. Remember, here in Southern California, we used to have a situation where what number did all of the kids wear on their jerseys in Southern California and throughout the country, but really in Southern California, they all want to wear the 5. They come to visit USC, they want the number 5. Well, guess what? Now all those kids in the DMV are going to be wearing 13s because they have a new guy, Caleb Williams, who they're going to start following, kind of like Reggie Bush. So that's going to be a huge boost in the recruiting for USC.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And, the SEC has its own challenges, right? There's a lot of great talent out there, and we're not debating that. A lot of great talent in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, that part of the country. But you have a number of programs, soon to be 16 in the SEC. You've got the 14 ACC programs, and you got every other major program, such as Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Notre Dame, going down there to look for talent. So it is very difficult. You're going against a number of schools to land those top recruits. Out here, like you just mentioned, Tim, it's like you take care of the West Coast, and now with the change in realignment in the landscape, you got USC as a national brand, always has been. Always has been a national brand. So now you have a university, like you mentioned, it's going to have the prime TV windows on Fox, CBS, and NBC weekly, and you're going to be going against major top 10 all-time blue blood programs every year, something that other schools are not going to have the ability to have. You have a top 25 university, and you have Los Angeles, where you can build your brand. And you just saw Caleb Williams do it. And guess what? The pregame show, you're going to see Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, who built their brand at USC. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is a beautiful thing. And for the people that are wondering now, the fact that USC got Deuce Robinson, pulled in Deuce, that now puts USC ahead of Dan Lanning's Ducks and the Cali Flock and all this stuff we're hearing. This is just the beginning, you guys. Honestly, they have been recruiting very well. They're using their NIL money very, I'll say the word strategically, in order to get players to come up to AA Eugene. But going forward, they are not going to be the major player that they have been, especially if they're getting locked out of being in the Big Ten. It really probably means that USC is going to have their pick, as instead of being like an LSU, a Georgia, an Alabama, a Clemson, a Miami, all fighting for the same guys in the corner. You really just have USC and a bunch of other schools that probably aren't going to be as successful.
And to add another component to this, Tim, is we didn't even bring up the transfer portal. So let's bring up the transfer portal right now, because that's part of recruiting. It's part of your roster management, your roster. You're building your roster. If you look at the transfer portal, this past up until this point right now, we have 12 transfers. They come from different schools, and but you break out the states where they came from. You got Indiana, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Washington. 8 states. Okay, they all want to come and play with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley and help get to the college football playoff and win a national championship. I think that's the language we're using now, and I believe in it. and they want to showcase their talents and improve their opportunity to get to the NFL.
I like the statement right here from Paige behind me. I like the fact that he's pointing something out that Josh Pate pointed out, and make no mistake about it, we do realize that once this ball gets rolling, and if you have the right, I've been saying for a long time, if you have the right coach here at USC, you could do special things. And the fact that we have a great coach, that we have a great university, and now we're going into the Big Ten, which is a great conference. We won't be hidden behind the Pac-12 network anymore.
Yep.
The things that are coming in the momentum that's building at USC, you could see it and hear it in the confidence from the coaches when they talk. And I believe that the families of the recruits and the recruits themselves are going to start buying into that momentum that USC is building. So another question we had was a question, and I am sorry, I really appreciate a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys are in the chat. We're trying to highlight your chat. And there's also people that are leaving comments. I've asked you guys to leave comments in the past. And unfortunately, last week, we had a great question come to us, but I didn't have a chance to catch it because it came in pretty much right before the show started. So when we have questions, you guys please get them in. But Kerry Conley, if you're out there, thank you so much for the question. His question was about USC playing Notre Dame. He said, the Big doesn't usually play non-conference games during conference play. And the rivalry week at the end of November, won't the Big be expecting USC to play? Now, this brings up a really great conversation. This definitely had to be a discussion point when USC was talking about moving to the Big Ten. There's absolutely no doubt this didn't come up at some point, that USC was going to protect its special rivalry with the Fighting Irish. And I know that there's a couple of things that are in USC's favor. One, this is a huge game. Of all the games played by Pac-12 teams last year in the regular season, the USC game with over 6 million was the largest against Notre Dame. And it's kind of strange because it was lower than I thought it would be, but it was still the highest in the Pac-12. This game is special. For many years, going all the way back to the 60s and the 70s, on television, it really was like almost the game of the year a lot of times. This game has been the difference maker in many national championships going back. And so this game is huge. It is protected. But the question is going to be the scheduling problem, Rick. I'm not saying, no one in the right mind, no Trojan right mind saying that we're not going to play Notre Dame anymore. I think we are going to find a way to play them. But the question is where are we going to throw the game?
Yeah, that's a great point. The game will be played, but I think the game is, Notre Dame is going to have to work with USC on scheduling. And we kind of all know that Notre Dame likes to do and be Notre Dame. But they're going to have to listen to SC on scheduling on this. And yes, they had a chance to join the Big Ten. They have not. Who knows? They may at one point, but don't hold your breath. So they have their relationship with NBC, and at one time that was a great platform. But college football has evolved, and it's moved forward. And USC in the Big Ten is it's a great opportunity. So yes, before in the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-8, back in the day, that was a big game. As you'd mentioned, it was one of the best games because they're one of the top 10 programs of all time, and USC would play them annually. Now moving to the Big Ten, guess what? There's Michigan, there's Ohio State, and there's Penn State. And then you have a championship game. So there's 3 more of the top 10 all-time programs. So Notre Dame, USC has 3 of them. And so Notre Dame's going to have to work with USC on the schedule because, as you'd mentioned, Tim, this is going to be a major opportunity for Notre Dame to get more eyeballs. Yeah. And that's what they're about. And this is going to be one of the biggest games on their schedule.
Yeah. And to reiterate the leverage part of this, you see, back in the day, USC was the big game with Notre Dame. I mentioned 6 million that they got last year for the viewership in that game. Well, Ohio State and Michigan got over 17 million views for their game. I'd have to imagine, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm just going to assume when USC plays Ohio State, when USC plays Michigan, I don't know if they get 17 million, but I think that those are going to be huge games. And there's very quickly, we're going to rekindle some rivalries. There's some games that Ohio State fans remember. They could deny it, but they remember USC and what we've done to them in the past. Michigan fans, same thing, some Rose Bowls that they probably want to avenge. There is some bad blood between these programs. Don't you forget that. Not to mention the fact you have the regionality of, the salt of the earth Midwest beating up on those surfer boys from the left coast. So there's going to be a lot of built-in rivalry here. And I'm wondering if Notre Dame is losing some of that leverage they've had in the past. And I'm wondering if the Big Ten and USC use this leverage to force Notre Dame into the Big Ten. And on that thought, we have a very special guest coming in. We have Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire. Matt, how are you doing?
Doing great, guys. And hey, you continue to knock it out of the park. Deuce Robinson, recruiting against the SEC, wonderful stuff. So you continue to do a great job. And just want to tell everyone here at the Voice of College Football, if you haven't done it already, subscribe to, like, share Trojan Conquest Live, the USC channel at the Voice of College Football, to tangibly support what Tim and Rick are doing every Sunday evening. Because like the weather's lovely right now, and they're giving up a little bit of that Sunday evening real estate to give you, the fan, more USC content that you crave here at the Voice of College Football. My thought about USC and Notre Dame, I mean, what comes across as really the interesting point is that, NBC has the number 2 Big Ten game under the new Big Ten contract. Fox has the number 1. NBC has number 2, and that's the prime time window of 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, and then CBS gets the third window at 3:30. That's going to be the Rutgers, Maryland window that I like to call it. So it's going to be interesting in the years when USC goes to South Bend, such as this year. How's NBC going to handle that? Because NBC has the Notre Dame contract, and NBC is going to have the Big Ten number 2 game. I would think that NBC is going to insist on USC Notre Dame being a primetime game, middle of October, in the years when USC has to go to South Bend. But then, does NBC get a second game on those Saturdays, or is NBC just kind of stuck? Is that going to I can't imagine NBC would want to just give up a game slot on that Saturday. Would NBC go for a late night game? Is that how it's going to work? NBC will do Notre Dame USC at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific with the Notre Dame announced crew, and then just would NBC get an 11 Eastern, 8 p.m. Game with let's say Michigan State at UCLA late on the West Coast? I don't know how that's going to work, but that's going to be a very, very interesting piece. I don't think we should worry about whether this series is going to continue because it's ratings gold. More perspective on this is that this was the only USC regular season game, before conference championship weekend. It was the only USC game Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit called as a team last season. And, ESPN didn't show the USC Oregon State game in Corvallis. That was slotted to Pac-12 Network. And of course, I lost my SHIT over that because that game certainly deserved better than Pac-12 Network. But that was the product of ESPN and Fox, holding their cards and waiting to play the USC card late in the season. So Tim, you mentioned the Big Ten, they like to get the non-conference games out of the way in early September and then just play the 9 conference games consecutively. You're right. But you're not going to see USC Notre Dame in September. You're not. Well, the networks are going to want that game to remain later in the year. I would like to think that Mike Bone and, for that matter, Notre Dame AD Jack Swarbrick got together and said, we're going to keep things as they are. They had a little talk with NBC. They had a little talk with Fox. Let's not mess up a good thing that we have going here.
Well, maybe you can help me because maybe I'm missing something. Usually week 0 and week 1 games usually just have a bunch of nothing burger games. There's just zero interest that people want to even watch. Where I'm thinking is I'm being USC selfish, and I'm saying USC's gonna be traveling to the Midwest. So let's say there's 9. So there's 9 games. The USC schedule. This is a big misconception, by the way. All the people talk about how tough it's going to be for
Yes.
USC to travel. Remember, there's 9 games, but one of those is against UCLA. So that means we're playing them either here in LA or over there in LA. Right across town. So that's a non-issue. That leaves 8. I'm assuming, and I don't know the exact schedule, but we're going to get 4 home games and 4 away games. I don't know if they do 4 and 5 or they flip around. I don't know how they're going to work it, but I'm assuming even down the middle on average it'll be 4 and 4. So that means we're going back east into the Midwest 4 times a year. And those 4 times a year, I'm thinking, I've heard discussions you've had with Mark, and I've heard discussions people have had as well regarding the fact they're probably going to bookend these things. So meaning you probably go out there, you fly out there on maybe like a Thursday, you have your walk through that, you go to your first game, and then you stay there all week long, and then you have your second game in the Midwest, and then you fly home. Where I'm seeing this problem with the Notre Dame situation is now you throw that one in. That means we're doing 5, and I'm okay with that. But do we want an additional? And this is my question to Matt and to you, Rick. Do we want an additional game every other year in the Midwest, right in the middle of Big Ten conference play? And I'm talking purely not NBC executives or Fox executives. I'm saying you as an AD, you as a coach, you as a fan. Do we want an additional trip to the Midwest somewhere in there, a 5th game in the middle of our schedule, our conference schedule? That's my question.
All right, I'll take it and then I'll hand it over to Rick. My thought, if I'm Mike Bone, here's what I would insist on. In the years when USC has to go to South Bend, and so in other words, you're going to have to play 5 games, in the Midwest, or 5 games in the Central or Eastern time zones. The 2 things I would insist on: one, that if we play Notre Dame, we get an off week, either the week before or the week after. And also, or you could also say either the week before, or if we played Notre Dame and then a Big Ten game, then we get an off week the week after that second follow-up week in the Midwest. So you get an off week either right before or right after the 2-game trip, Notre Dame plus a Big Ten school. That would be one absolute non-negotiable stipulation. The other thing is that if the game attached to your 2-game trip in the middle of October to the Midwest, so Notre Dame being one game and then the Big Ten being the other, it has to be a mid or lower tier Big Ten game. Like, you cannot have Notre Dame and Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Penn State. It would have to be some moderate Big Ten opponent. Maybe Northwestern, maybe Minnesota. And PJ Fleck, Minnesota can be relatively decent, not spectacular, but decent. So you could grumble about, hey, Notre Dame, Minnesota, back-to-back weeks, maybe that's going to be tough. But we can certainly establish a hierarchy between the really good Big Ten teams, or the Big Ten teams that are expected to be really, really good, and then a middle tier, and then a lower tier. Just, you can't have the Notre Dame road trip and a top tier Big Ten opponent in consecutive weeks. And that just reinforces briefly why this Pac-12 schedule was such an FU on the way out the door, having Notre Dame and then Utah in consecutive weeks. I mean, that's just flipping the bird. And so I certainly hope that Mike Bone made his point very clear. And I'm sure he has discussed this. How could he not have done it? When we go to Notre Dame, we have to get some cushion, either in an off week and or with a medium at best opponent on the other side of it.
Yeah, and I somewhat agree with that. And I think one thing that would be interesting to see is you look at historically Ohio State and Michigan schedules. They play right off the bat 3 or 4 home games in a row. Usually there are 3 non-conference opponents, and there's a Big Ten team in there maybe on the 4th game. So a lot of those games against Ohio State, Michigan, even Penn State. I think Penn State this year plays Auburn its 3rd game. and then I think they play Central Michigan their 4th game, and I think they start off the year with Purdue. But really, in those first 3 to 4 games, why not have USC play Notre Dame? Let's say in the 3rd game, like you were saying, Matt, you kind of bookend them. So you play Notre Dame, you're going to have a great TV window. You're going to go up against Ohio State and San Jose State. You're going to go up against Michigan and UNLV, right? So you get that game, and then you have the next week where you play Northwestern, and like you'd mentioned, Matt, you come back to LA, you get a bye, and then you continue the schedule. So the game is not in mid-October like it normally is, but if you're Notre Dame, you don't have the leverage because you're dealing with Fox, CBS, and NBC in the Big Ten. You had a chance to go to the Big Ten. You did not go to the Big Ten. What we're going to offer you is just a change in time slot, change in from October to September, but we're helping you build your brand. Because guess what? Notre Dame's got a national following, and there's going to be a lot of interest in that game because Big Ten opponents want USC to lose, and all the Notre Dame Subway alum want USC to lose, right? They want Hollywood to lose. So I would be interested in a week 3 or week 4 Notre Dame game. Maybe you play Northwestern week 3 or Illinois, and then you play Notre Dame, you come back to LA and have a bye week.
So the issue I'm having with a couple of these conversation is one, I know you guys are addressing the point from the USC standpoint. I mean, I see the bye week, but Matt, I'm not sure if the rest of the pack, the other teams in the Big Ten are going to say, okay, well, we'll give you Northwestern. I don't know if they're going to act. That's a big ask. I get you there, right? I totally get that. And my point is, I think we need to use the leverage on many levels. Like I said, we have to make it happen.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Tim. Like USC, no one was forcing USC to go to the Big Ten. So like I'm thinking that when this was initially negotiated last year, leading up to June 30, 2022, when the big bombshell, was broken, like in the lead up to the announcement on June 30, 2022, like Mike Bohn had to have said, we need this, this, and this. And like you're not going to get everything you want, but there should have been like some non-negotiable, tent pole pillar type asks that Mike Bohn made of Kevin Warren in the Big Ten, of Fox, of the main stakeholders, the main power players. And, like he's smart enough to have done that. And, Rick earlier mentioned USC's baseball program. It's interesting how Deuce Robinson fits into that. Like it seemed as though Mike Bohn hit a home run with Andy Stankiewicz. USC's first in the Pac-12. So you have the Andy Stankiewicz hire, you have the Lindsey Gottlieb hire, USC women's basketball poised to take off. And of course, he landed the plane metaphorically and literally with Lincoln Riley. So like Mike Bohn, he's making all these splash hires. He's one very smart cookie. Like I would be stunned if he didn't get some hardcore, firmed up stipulations and concessions from the Big Ten. I'd be stunned if he didn't get at least some significant baseline requirements when the original negotiations to enter the Big Ten, were in their final stages.
And here's something else that what helps out is Notre Dame is independent. Yes, they play anywhere from 4 to 6 ACC teams every year. If you look at their future schedules, it's between 4 and 6. But they have an independent schedule, so that allows them more flexibility in moving a proposed October game to September. It doesn't have to be Northwestern or Illinois. It could be another team that's in close proximity to Chicago, to South Bend. It could be a Wisconsin, or it could be Purdue. It could be Indiana. There's flexibility on who the opponent can be.
Yeah, from South Bend, Indiana, you're right smack dab in the middle. Except if you talk about the extremes, if you talk about going to Maryland, right, out east, that's fine. But pretty much everywhere else, it's just like you're within a bus ride of a lot of the Big Ten schools. So I get that. I'm just saying we're saying 4. I'm just doing the math in my head. So there's one trip with 2. You don't want to be out there for 2 weeks, right? So the way I've worked it out is as you bookend them, you have 2 bookend weeks where you're going to be out in Big Ten country. If you add in the Notre Dame game, that means either you're going to have a 2 and 3. bookend, or you're gonna have a 2-2 and a 1. And it just kind of it's just that it's not the travel is the problem. It's the timing of the travel and how if you have to go back and forth. And I would again, I'm saying as far as being a coach, being an AD, if I'm a fan, if I want what's best for USC, we're playing that game also for another reason as well. You know, it's a great way to kickstart. We always talk about it is true. How many Heisman trophies has that game on both sides decided, right? You get that big showcase game true, but you could flip the coin on that one and say, hey, listen, what about starting the year with that game? Get all the attention, get all the momentum, the hype on your guy early on the season. I think there's a lot of benefit. I don't have the answer to what's going to be, but I do think that having that game in October, and we don't ever want to play in South Bend in November for obvious reasons, but you just don't want to add that extra game. So therefore, I'm thinking schedule-wise, USC should try to use their leverage to move that game to the beginning of the year.
I would add this point that in the years when you have to go to Notre Dame and that problem of, having to play 5 games, in the Central or Midwest time zones emerges, Tim, in the years when you have to go to South Bend, like the schedule should have a week 0 game, quite frankly, because you will need that cushion later in the season to build in another buffer, of rest for the team. So, without the having to go to South Bend when you're hosting Notre Dame on Thanksgiving weekend, you don't need that extra cushion because the logistics aren't nearly as complicated with one fewer Big Ten road game or one fewer Midwest road game, I should clarify. So that's another piece of this larger puzzle.
And that's your key right there. How about week 0 games are usually pretty bad, right? We see them. They're not usually very good. Imagine week 0, Notre Dame, you get all eyes are on the USC Notre Dame game. It might allow that game to stick out like it deserves, and maybe it could get some more momentum from
and it'll be 90 degrees. So that's my counterpoint.
We can add a little bit of Midwest humidity, 90 degrees and 90% humidity. I mean, that might not be too bad.
But one thing about the long-term future of the rivalry, let's remember that the 100th anniversary of USC Notre Dame is in 2026. And so you're not going to see like the 100th anniversary, that's going to be a powerful driving force to say, hey, this has been special for a century. Let's continue it for another one.
Well, speaking of Notre Dame, there's a guy who played really well at USC. That was USC. That was USC's great tailback, Reggie Bush, who is now working on 4,767 days since those jerks over at the NCAA decided to take his Heisman Trophy away. So Charlie Baker, I've said this 5 weeks in a row. You have really one job: figure it out. Somehow get this man back his trophy, and then we can move on from there. So now we're going to move to notes and quotes. There were a number of things that happened. We decided to move this into our game time. Usually in game time, we're talking about players, but this week, a lot of the talk has been around the players, the development, and what's going on at USC. So we thought we'd move it over into that portion of the show and begin talking about some interesting quotes we might have heard this week from a lot of the great press releases, but also interviews. If you guys aren't doing this, they talked about the fact that Lincoln Riley was not accessible to the media. There's been a lot of back and forth saying that he's much more accessible because he's in, I think Matt Euland brought up the fact that now you're in a media town and you need to make yourself available. You can catch Riley after each practice, usually talking a little bit clip here. He's on Trojans live on, I believe, Monday or Tuesdays. I can't remember. And then you also have it where he's at the Saturday where he talks to some of the journalists. So there's a lot of news and notes coming out. Does anything stick to your mind, Rick?
There's a few things that stick to my mind. I saw Monday Trojans Live, and Mason Cobb had some great things to say about Tackett Curtis. And we've heard and we've seen all the tape on Tackett Curtis. But to have a veteran middle linebacker like Mason Cobb speak highly of Tackett Curtis and how he's just doing things that you wouldn't expect a kid his age to do, that was eye-opening. And then you hear Caleb Williams also talk about Tackett Curtis. There's some buzz going on. And I can see this guy on special teams to begin the year. And then we've got that bye week, I think, after the third game. Don't be surprised if he's getting some serious playing time after that bye week. But I think Tacky Curtis, he's looking at that schedule and he wants to make a statement. Also, Caleb Williams was asked about Anthony Lucas. And, Anthony Lucas is a big guy. I think he's 6'5", 6'6", 295. And Caleb Williams was, I guess, in practice going to make a throw where he anticipated to either get a completion or a touchdown. I can't remember what. But the play was broken up by Anthony Lucas. And that basically told Caleb Williams, this guy's different. He's special. So, and he didn't have to really factor that in last year with the players that we had on the defensive roster. So we're seeing some changes. Those are two of the quotes and notes that kind of stood out. How about you, Tim? Anything that stood out to you?
Well, there's a really good interview, guys. You brought up basically he's going to be every year I pick, you try not to have favorites, right? But there's just no way I can't. Every time I've heard Mason Cobb speak, this guy is just awesome. He's going to be a great Trojan. And that's just off the field. Wait till you see him on the field. I can't wait. But for him to have that praise, again, at a guy who's playing his position, that probably he'll be competing, I don't know how seriously, but there's going to be some competition in that linebacker room. It speaks of volumes. I like the fact you brought up Caleb's conversation, talking about the play at the goal line. So they run plays, and usually in goal line situations. And there was a play he was talking about where the handoff was to Marshawn Lloyd, and he broke out to the outside, and there's just no way in heck that Lucas should have been able to make this play. He said he came out of nowhere. He just flashed down the sideline, right? He said, quote, didn't know how he made it. He came screaming down the line. It's when we had a live period and it blew it up and we didn't score. It was goal line and we did not end up scoring. He like when he was talking about it too, he's just saying, like he's blinking, saying, I've not seen a dude that big move that fast. Anything you've heard, Matt?
Well, in addition to that, this was kind of from maybe a week, 2 weeks ago. Jamil Muhammad, the Russian transfer from Georgia State, he's most likely going to be looking at a starting role in that Russian spot. And he's a graduate transfer, and he's had a couple of years playing that position at Georgia State. And, Southern California is totally different for him. And his dad had a good quote. The dad basically said that this is a business trip. He's coming out here and it's all about business. His son's not going to be about the palm trees. And so I really love that because they believe in what Lincoln Riley's talking about, what he's building out here, and they want to be a part of it. So he's got 1 year, and he wants to be part of that team that does something special, gets to the college football playoff, and gets a chance at the national championship. So when you have families that are buying in, that's something special. Matt?
Yeah, Tim cited earlier in the show Lincoln Riley talking about Deuce Robinson and, expressing greater clarity about the situation. And, so like Riley could have like sidestepped that. He could have said, well, we'll just kind of wait and see. He spoke with clarity on that. So like that, just getting a little bit more clarity and a more decisive feel that like, yes, this is happening. Deuce Robinson is going to suit up and play for USC. I mean, the analysis from experts was that, well, we just got to wait until the MLB draft. And like we still do, like we still need to let that play out. So like, I don't think we should be counting our chickens too much, but like Lincoln Riley certainly moved the needle noticeably in terms of, he's going to suit up for USC. He's going to play for the Trojans on the football field. So that's a pretty noteworthy thing for me.
Talking about suiting up, how are they fitting Kion Bars into his jersey and Devin Tompkins? These guys are absolutely massive. Tompkins is the guy. He's from the old. He's a holdover. And Riley said that hey, they weren't sure about him, but they're really glad they hung on to him. He's kind of growing into his body. They put on a lot of weight this year, starting to flash. He said he's making that transition from the scout team to playing with the big boys, right? And he believes he has a really bright future. And since he knows his position there at rush end, they've also been toying with moving him with additional size, moving him inside. So we're going to see, I think we're going to see some pretty interesting fronts that are coming from this defense, just the different looks they might give people. They have a lot of flexibility. And this is that thing we talked about last week, the fact that you're moving him from year 1 to year 2. Now a lot of these guys know it. Now you can start tweaking. They know their assignments. They know what to do. Now you can start adding those pieces. They're going to make this defense a little more unpredictable.
Yeah.
All right. No, Rick, I got to go. It's dinner time in the Zemek household, but just thanks for continuing to do a fantastic job. And next week, hey, we get to preview the spring game. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And I look forward to joining you guys next Sunday.
You guys, if you aren't checking out Matt Zemek's work, please make sure you do. If you obviously you're a diehard Trojan fan. If you're here in the beginning of April talking about Trojan football, you guys are diehards. So if you are a diehard Trojan fan, or you're just interested in USC football in general, if you're a fan of another team, make sure you're heading over to Trojans Wire, checking out Matt Zemek's work. He has just great articles every day. It's one of the beginning reads for me as I begin to get ready for this show every single week.
See you next Sunday, guys.
Thanks, Matt. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
All right, who's your next person you want to talk about as far as because there was a lot. I mean, we had a little, we were talking, you guys, sorry, we were going to talk about the wide receiver room today, but we just, so much information came out of these interviews that were going on throughout the week that we felt like, look, we're going to push that back. We're learning a lot about, Deuce Robinson's role. We're learning about how they're moving these defensive pieces around. We wanted to make sure that we gave you guys the most up-to-date information about what's coming out of the practices. So what do you have next, Rick?
Well, just kind of before I comment on, I'll get back to Devin Tompkins, but yes, there is a lot of stuff going on. And there was a number of recruits out at USC this weekend. We highlighted 2 of them that were there in the past week. And there's a lot of high school coaches that were at USC. And again, USC networking with the high school coaches, keeping them on the forefront of what's happening with USC, and then vice versa. All the assistant coaches networking with the local high school coaches to hear about who they have in the pipeline this year and the next several years to keep an eye on. So a lot of excitement going on at USC as we're leading up to the spring game on the 15th. Getting back to Devin Tompkins, that was a great point that you made, Tim. He's a development piece. And Lincoln Riley said, no, you don't have to worry about your scholarship, that we got a plan for you. And that was basically to put on weight. The guy did he's doing what he has to do. He put on 30 pounds, as you mentioned. And originally they were looking at putting him on the edge, but now they might have him inside, as you had mentioned. There's another development piece on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm sure this guy's on a similar type of weight gain program, but his name's Tobias Raymond out of Ventura High School. He's a 3-star recruit, but he has a frame. The kid came in at 6'7", 270. And I'm sure his goal is to put on 30 to 40 pounds. He's not going to be most likely getting any playing time this year. He'll be on the scout team and developing his frame. But at 6'7", if you get this guy at 310, 315, 320 in the latter part of his career, that's going to be a big boy. And he's got the frame to put it on. So it's great to see USC with not only getting guys in the transfer portal, high school recruiting, but then developing the guys into the roles that they need to develop into with Benny Wiley and his strength and conditioning and the nutrition program.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So one of the slanders coming out of Norman, Oklahoma, was the fact that Benny Wiley, the guys were weak, they weren't strong. Listen, we've seen these guys, at least the ones that are returning, right? I've seen huge transformations, no pun intended, from some of these guys, and so far that's proven wrong. Now the second piece of the puzzle is it, does he look like Tarzan and plays like Tarzan and plays like Jane? That might come. But I'm saying the eyeball test so far, it's looking pretty good. Speaking of the good news coming out, there's a lot more good news. But Kyle McDonald was talking about Marshawn Lloyd, and I think Marshawn Lloyd is going to be a huge part. What people don't realize when you talk about defense, a good part of what's the best defense is a good offense, right? And a good offense is going to take care of the ball. When you have a lead, you're going to salt away fourth quarters so you don't end up, fumbling kickoff returns and then giving up a safety and then having them march down the field. You take care of the ball and you run the clock out, and that's how you win games. And I think Marshawn Lloyd's could be that guy. He does a little bit of everything. He's explosive. He's versatile. He's got great hands. He's got great ball skills. These are all comments, by the way, from Kyle McDonald, the running back coach. He says he's tough. He's got a chance to do some very, very special things. And I totally agree with you. He talked then later about the fact, Kyle McDonald talked about the fact that Darwin Barlow, he's talking about the what was the phrase last year that they talked about? No blocky, no Rocky.
That's
right.
Travis
Dye made that famous. Well, the pass blocking, he says he's very happy with what Darwin Barlow coming along. He's making steps in the right direction. He said Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd their pass pro is just on par with Travis, very similar to Travis. And then he also brought up one of the freshmen, Amarion Peterson. This is a freshman from Texas. He said the dude is big. He's a physical young guy, and he can absolutely block. That's a direct quote from his coach. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tim, is that we have to develop a running game that can go in and control the clock in games where we need to and provide those crucial long fourth quarter drives to, like you said, salt away the win. But part of that is not only running the ball, but being able to block. And it's well known that in Lincoln Riley's offensive scheme, if you don't block, you don't play. And that goes with the wide receivers as well. So the great thing is that he can say that and back it up, and he does. You look at both of those rooms, and we'll go in the wide receiver room next week, as you'd mentioned, but they're both deep, running back and wide receiver. So if for some reason you're missing assignments and you're not blocking, well, guess what? You're not going to get the rock. So it's crucial that we have the depth that we do at running back, and it's fantastic to see. And we're getting those young guys, Amarion Peterson and Quentin Joyner, into the mix. They're going to be developing, and to go along with Barlow, Austin Jones, and Breeley Brown, and Marshawn. So it's going to be exciting to see what Kyle McDonald is developing in that room.
Yeah, and then there's news that I'm not too sure about this, but it looks like Rayleigh Brown's getting more of a role like as a slot receiver. They're moving him out. One thing that they talked about is the fact that he's got, Caleb said that he's got better hands. The quote is his hands are a lot better than people think. His route running, we're working on it. So basically, he's talking about he's making that transition, right, to doing like end arounds, and you're going to see him come out of the backfield, or you might see him line up in the slot. We saw Reggie line up the slot sometimes. They're going to move him. All they want to do, he says, the goal is just to get the ball into his hands and let him do something special. And so I think because there is a pretty full running back room, I think there's looking for some ways to get the ball into his hands or just use him as a decoy. But they're trying to find ways to use Rayleigh Brown because he's a special, amazing player.
Yeah, Rayleigh is, I think the game, it's always tough for a freshman to come in that's got that much ability, that much talent, because they're used to just blowing away the high school talent. Even though Rayleigh was playing at the highest level, playing in the Trinity League for modern day, you come up to D1 football with USC and their schedule, the game is a lot faster than it was. And you with Lincoln Riley's complex offensive scheme, it takes time to process. Now you get a year under your belt, and you've got another off season to get into the playbook, understand what the expectations are. The game is going to slow down a little bit more, I anticipate, this year for him, and you're going to be able to see him react a lot better, a lot faster, and create those angles and those windows to hit the hole and break open some plays. So I'm expecting some big things from Rayleigh this year.
Yeah. And again, one more, I hate to beat a dead horse, but this is that thing. In year 2, when he gets his running assignments, his blocking assignments, the running back down, he gets that stuff done, you can start adding pieces to the puzzle. Now making an already dynamic offense even more dynamic, the offense that has insane weapons, adding one more weapon. You got to worry about him coming in the slot. So it's going to be pretty amazing. I'm looking at HR Pickenstuff's comment. got to get Deuce the ball and not ask him to focus on blocking. He needs to run routes. Rick, we just said the same thing about the wide receivers. People don't realize how much blocking wide receivers do. Remember, he's not going to be a tight end. He's going to be a wide receiver. He's going to be that big receiver. Like, if everyone watched Drake London just pushing safeties and corners all the way down the field, I remember seeing that. This is the same thing Deuce is going to do at 230, right? 6'6", 230. None of these guys. Yes, it's going to be a mismatch when he's trying to catch the ball, but imagine when he's blocking a corner in the small corners in the Pac-12 and or defensive backs or even a safety, even a linebacker. He'll have the size to do that. He's that hybrid. So I agree with you. I want to see what he could do with the ball in space. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of that. But remember the mantra that's been put out there. All right, no blocky, no rocky. So if you want to get Rick, you made a big point to this to me. If you want to get that ball, if you want to see the field, you also better be taking care of your blocking.
Well, exactly. And let's say there's 6 minutes left to go in the game and you're up by a touchdown and you do not want to give that ball back to the other team. And you got a 6-minute drive and Riley saying, hey, we're going to close it out right now. And that might come with, I don't know, 8 run plays and 3 pass plays. Well, guess what? You better be blocking on those 6 to 8 run plays and not be shrugging your shoulders and not hitting the guy in front of you because you're not going to be selling the play, right? So you have to be blocking on those crucial runs because that's part of your role as a receiver, right? Is creating those holes, those little spaces for a guy like Marshawn Lloyd or Rayleigh Brown to break one open and hopefully get a touchdown. And then you're up by 2 touchdowns and you have a better chance of winning the game.
Yeah, you're sealing that edge, right? Or you're downfield on that second level blocking. So a 5-yard play turns into, a 15, 20 or break it kind of play. There's a question here from Tight End Delay saying, so do we use tight ends in college football ever? Last year, the Trojans did not use the tight end position very much. But I will counter that with the fact is, did you see the receiving room that we had last year? It was kind of like, this is no slight on Lake McCree. I think he's going to have an amazing breakout year this year. I'm almost certain of he's have a great year. But when you have the receiving options that USC had, it's like, do you want to throw to your tight end or do you want to throw these receivers? I know there needs to be some kind of balance. I know you need to take care of the underneath plays, maybe to set up the longer plays. So I agree with you there. I think, though, Tight End Delay, that you're going to be very happy as you see the tight ends use with Lake McCree coming in. And I think you might even see, although it'll be like Drake London, where it's like he almost plays like a split out tight end. That's kind of the role he's going to have to get those tough over the middle catches.
Well, I think the tight end room at USC is developing, and we're going to see more of it, more throws to the tight end this year in the coming years. And this is why. Let me tell you why. Is like you mentioned, this is Lake McCree. He's put on more weight. He understands the playbook. It's his 2nd year with Lincoln Riley, 3rd year with the program. But don't forget, we also have Walker Lyons, who's going to be going on a mission. And we were able to recruit Walker Lyons and Duce Robinson, both as tight ends. Obviously, it's been mentioned that Deuce is going to be a wide receiver, but Georgia was in the running for both of those. And if you remember, Walker Lyons was a Stanford decommit. So we also have this year H-back Cade Eldridge from Washington, the state of Washington, high school player from Washington, who's going to be enrolling in the summer. So it's thought that he's going to be getting reps at the tight end position. And we also have Carson Tabarachi, a Utah linebacker transfer who's switching over to the tight end position. He's going to provide depth. And our lone sole 2024 recruit is a top 5-star tight end out of Oregon in Joey Olson. So we're going to have some tight end depth in the near future, which we'll see more plays to the tight end, I would suspect.
Yeah, Riley actually made a point when he was talking about Tabarachi. He said he has a really unique skill set. He didn't elaborate on that very much, but I'm very curious to see how he's going to play him in that H-back position or tight end position this year. It should be pretty interesting. Staying in the running back room for a little bit more, Kyle McDonald had a quote where he's talking about the fact that the recruiting room, the running back room is getting pretty crowded with a lot of talent. And, he's just saying that you just, those guys in the room, they just have to show up and do what you do. Play your best ball and you'll be fine. But at the end of the day, we are going to continue to recruit the best players in the country here. This is USC, and that's just the nature of the beast. So at any top program, we had it here at USC for years where, the Pete Carroll running back rooms were just filthy deep. And that's what you're going to have here at USC. Is don't look over your shoulder, just take care of your own business and make sure you're doing what you need to do in order to get on the field. Otherwise, there will be young people coming in to take your position. All right, moving on then. Finally, my last point I had was from Justin Dietich. If you are not watching Justin Dietich's interviews, they are among the most entertaining of any interview that you'll get from a USC football player. When he was talking about the size, Rick earlier talked about how our defense is getting bigger and stronger. He's really talking about the transfer from Arizona, Kion Bars. He says he's a special player. He's made me better already in these 6-7 practices. How strong he is, his inside hands, his feet. He's definitely an elite player. He went on to talk about the fact that they grew up in the same valley. He's from Marietta. I'm from Temecula. They used to play so he was like heading out when he was just a young guy, and he does remember playing him. But this, when we talk about all the transfers we got in, especially on defense, some of the other guys that came in with a little more accolades, with a little more excitement, with a little, with more stats and more excitement. But when you talk about where USC's defense has been deficient, it's been the fact that we're letting quarterbacks be comfortable back there. We're letting, we're not causing disruption in the backfield. And the best way to disrupt your quarterback is to collapse that pocket from the front and just shove it backwards. And I'm really hoping, if anyone's seen this guy, Kion Bars, literally he's one of those guys that makes his numbers look small and everything just gets stretched out. It's just he's not. It's not like a lot of bad weight. The guy looks like a fire plug, and Antoine Woods, like a Cookie Monster kind of guy who's just gonna get up in there, and I think he can create that havoc. If not get to the quarterback himself, he'll be able to push that pocket back. And the second part of this is where he's talking about getting better. The drop off between first team and second team was probably pretty significant last year. Riley said this is probably going to be the least talented team that we're going to coach. He just said it flat out. I don't want to disparage any players on the team. They're all great Trojans, but he said it. We're going to get it better. Well, it looks like that when you play up against these guys, like Deej is saying, Bars is making him a better center. He might be much better than any of the defensive linemen that he's going to go up against this year. And so knowing that, when you have a player that's pushing your players in practice, and you have someone that's going to actually drive you and make you get better, like he's saying he's getting better, that's only going to pay dividends on the field.
Yeah, and Kion Bars, he was a second-team All Pac-12 last year. And, viewers out there in the chat, you've probably seen it on social media. But as you know, when you go to USC practice, you're leaving the McKay Center, and you slap the Trojan Sword. You got to cross, I think that might be McClintock is the street to get to the Howard Jones practice facility. Well, there's a security guy there making sure traffic kind of stops as the players cross the street. Well, Kion Bars, he's new from Arizona. He steps off the sidewalk, and he almost got taken out by a girl on the scooter, right? But you saw his quick feet. Guy for 295, he had quick feet and stepped out of the way. So, I mean, that's part of his athleticism that Justin Deej is talking about. But yes, he brings a different skill set than obviously was on the defensive line before. He's got, Deej talked about his technique, his quick feet, his hand position. So this guy knows what he's doing. And like you'd mentioned, a la Cedric Ellis or Antoine Woods, he's going to collapse the center of that offensive line, and put pressure on the quarterback. So hopefully we get more pressure this year coming from the edge and from the center to take down the quarterback and blow up plays.
Yeah. I would like to hear more, but I heard Caleb, when he was talking about guys that were flashing for him, he did bring up the fact that Corey Foreman has been improving. He's seen some improvement there. But the question here, Rick, I'll throw it to you first, is the Ace the King 08. He's asking us any breakout candidates at the D line besides the transfer guys. So we already talked about Tompkins. Is there any other defensive line guy that you think is going to be a breakout that's not a transfer?
Ace King, thank you very much for the question. One name that I've heard in the last couple weeks is Solomon Tuliapupu. I'm hearing that he is looking bigger, looking faster, and that's somebody to look at on the defensive line this year. So I'd keep an eye on him. We've talked about Tompkins, and that's a name that I would take a look at. And Solomon has been in this program for a number of years from the old coaching staff, and if you remember, he was injured for like his first 3 years, but he got a lot of playing time last year. He got reps, and so that would be a guy I would be focused in on taking a look at how he develops this year.
Yeah. Now he's probably not gonna get a lot of early playing time, but I've heard a lot of one of the highest recruited defensive linemen that we've had was Braylon Shelby. He's an edge rusher, 6'4", 6'5", this is his. I'm looking at his recruiting. It says 235. I'm sure he probably put on some weight earlier this year. So let's say he's 240. They're expecting some really great things from him. I can see him having a breakout season towards the end of the season. We talked about the fact we're hoping that the first half of the season we're able to generate the kind of leads where we can get the backups some playing time while we rest and protect the starters. I could see him hopefully by the middle to end of the season starting to make some waves and being someone that could break out and flash. So I don't really have any more news and notes. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about as far as notes?
You know what? I think I do have a question, Tim, and we appreciate everybody that's checking out the show, and those who watch the show or listen to the show during the week. And we like to get to as many questions as we can. And we appreciate comments on the videos. And I'm going to read you a comment we have from a Bless 'em Breaks. And this was from about 5 days ago. And Bless 'em Breaks, bless your heart. He says, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban needed a year to succeed. But guess what? They recruited the crap out of the country. And he was so emphatic that he said they recruited the crap, all in caps. We can't keep our local recruits. I promise you, we are nowhere near close to competing for a championship, let alone getting into the playoffs. I'm just being real, and you guys are being delusional. Well, hey, first off, bless them Banks. God bless your heart for taking the time to send us a comment. And we love to hear from you. And you know what? I love your passion and that we're nowhere close to a playoff, and you've got your opinion. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to Nick Saban and Urban Meyer and recruiting and the situation that went on there. It's kind of like, hey, Jennifer Aniston or Courtney Cox, who is the cuter girl on Friends, right? Everybody has their own opinion. You might like brunettes, you might like blondes or colored blondes or whatever Jennifer Aniston was. But let me give you some facts right here. Bless them Banks or Branks or yes, Nick Saban is the GOAT. He came into a totally different situation than Urban Meyer at Ohio State. If you remember, Jim Tressel was a longtime successful coach at Ohio State, and Luke Fickell was basically the placeholder for a year, and then they hired Urban Meyer long term. So Ohio State had been recruiting at a high level for a number of years. So Urban Meyer came into a pretty good situation. I'm not going to compare Urban Meyer to Lincoln Riley. Let's take Nick Saban, because Nick Saban followed Mike Shula, and he came in 2007, right? And I think they were pretty much a 500 team. And then, so I'm going to tell you about Nick Saban's 2008 recruiting class. Okay. Now understand, college football was different back then, but we're talking about, okay, Lincoln Riley doesn't recruit on a national level. We can't keep our California guys home, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Well, Nick Saban is the GOAT. I'm going to take him. We're going to compare real quick. And in 2008, Nick Saban, they didn't have the transfer portal. They have the transfer portal now. But Nick Saban, his second recruiting class, which was all his, he had 32 players. So basically what Nick did was in his second year, he kind of knew who could play and who could not, and they were gone. And so he was able to sign 32 players in that 2008 class. And guess what? 18 were from Alabama. So basically 56% of his class was from in-state. And then the last 14 players came from 9 different states. So if that is recruiting national, those are your words, because Nick Saban recruits national, right? 9 different states. And those states were Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, and Michigan. So basically, of those 9 states, 6 were in the region, the Southeast region. I'll give it to Nick. He went up to Michigan, got a player. He went up to Virginia, got a player, and he went to West Virginia. So that's kind of more of a national scope. Okay, 32.
Well, he's from Rick. He's from West Virginia, and he coaches at Michigan State. So maybe you're giving him too much credit for moving around. So he has some connections, both those. And Nick Saban went on to be awesome, right? I mean, this
right.
is, but his point was year one. And I totally get what you're saying.
Right. So here, I'm going to give you Lincoln Riley. Okay. So Lincoln Riley, as we know, he came on at the end of November of 2021. And he had a small recruiting class, 8 players. And then he had the transfers, 20. Okay. Now this year, he's got 22 high school recruits. Deuce Robinson on Thursday was the 22nd one. Up to this point, he has 12 transfers. That's 34 players. Am I doing my math right there, Tim? I want to make sure I give this guy. Yeah. Okay. So 22 plus 12 is 34. Nick Saban had 32 in the second year. All right. There you go. So let me tell you about USC's recruiting class. 10 players are from the state of California. 10 of the 34. So roughly 30%. So 70% of his recruiting class transfers are out of state. Okay. And if you take a look at it, they are from Nevada, Louisiana, Texas, Arizona, Maryland, Washington, Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Florida. Now, it should be known that the transfer portal, you're getting proven players. Okay. And as I stated earlier in the show, you got a kid from Texas A&M. You have 3 players from Arizona, 1 player from ASU, a player from Washington State, Purdue, South Carolina, Oklahoma State, Georgia, Florida. Does that sound like it's national? Yeah. Okay. So not only is he getting the Western region, kind of like Nick Saban got the Southeast, and as you mentioned, he went into Michigan, he went into West Virginia and Virginia, which is kind of like relationships with Nick Saban. But Lincoln Riley's going all over. Not only can he recruit the high school kid, but he can recruit the transfer portal kid, and your window is much shorter. So yeah, people will say he's tampering. That's just whiny people like some of the questions that we get. But it's been a year, and Pat Narduzzi still has not provided any records of tampering, any phone records. So we're still waiting, Pat. But there you go, Blessed. There's the answer.
Yeah. I think that people sometimes have a short memory, and we look at what these players have done. You had a situation for Urban Meyer coming in. Tressel had completely set that table. I mean, without the sanctions, they probably would have won a national championship. They had a great. He walked into a lot of talent, and there's no debating that. Lincoln Riley walked into one of the worst defensive performances the year before that I've seen in the 30 plus years of really following and watching USC football. And to turn that around, even to what they did, I think is actually a testament. Although the numbers don't really pan out, I think it was, we don't want to blame players, but when you look at the plays, it was a lot of guys just missing tackles. It wasn't one of the got wide open guys. It was just really some just bad fundamentals. And that does fall on the coaching staff and development as well, but also falls on the player. I think they did a lot to improve the strength of the player. I think they did a lot to bring in some new players. And I think that the defense, it's time. It's time for them to show what they can do. I do believe in these players. Again, I know we have some great players, but when we center this defense on our established guys before, and then we bring a guy to center, a middle linebacker like Mason Cobb, it's gonna be a top 50 defense. And that's why I'm standing by. That'd be a huge improvement. And with that top 50 defense, bringing guys in from all over, like he did, like Rich just said, he brought guys in from all over to fix the holes we have on the defense. This defense will be a top 50. And if it is a top 50 defense, we will be knocking on the playoffs. If by some chance, this defense with these new players, which could happen. I mean, we brought in some really special guys. It could be a top 30. And if we're a top 30 defense with this offense that we're about to unleash on the world, you definitely, now we're talking about, we have a chance to play for a national championship. And I will stand behind that.
Yeah. And if you look at it, getting back to Bless and Breaks, he said, "I promise you, we are nowhere close to competing for a championship, let alone getting into the playoffs." I mean, before this year's recruiting class and transfer portal, we are a few plays away from getting to the college football playoff, which nobody expected. You and I both had USC going into this year with last year's transfer portal and 8 signees from high school and going 8-4. Those were the expectations.
Yeah, we've met some really nice Ute fans.
Yeah, well, Lincoln Riley, he totally exceeded expectations, winning 11 games. And yes, we did lose to Utah twice. Nobody in their right mind would have predicted USC making the playoffs in their first year.
We really did meet some nice Ute fans. Larry has been an awesome, great supporter of our show as well as a lot of shows. And I wish all Ute fans could be like Larry. And they're not going to hear what I'm about to say to them. We weren't a couple plays. We weren't a game away from the playoffs. We were an Achilles tendon away from the playoffs because we were already missing. We were dinged up on the line. We didn't have Voorhees for the entire game. And then losing a player, in the middle of the game, like the caliber of Caleb Williams, once he went down, if you guys remember the drives before he got hurt, it was just like Swiss cheese. We were moving the ball. The defense was building off that momentum. No one knows what's going to happen, but if you had to really corner me and ask me who wins that game early on, if Caleb Williams stays healthy, I'm giving the odds to USC winning that game. So for him to say that we weren't even close to making the playoffs, I'm not sure if this guy has been watching college football last year, because we were like an Achilles tendon away from being in the playoffs. I don't know how well we would have done in the playoffs with that defense, but with a healthy Voorhees, with a healthy Caleb, I think we could have done some special stuff.
Yeah, and this guy Bless and Breaks, he thinks Jennifer Aniston's hot. I think Courtney Cox is hot. So there you go.
Any more
opinion? I have my opinion. And
any more comments?
Right. What's that,
Rick? Any more comments from the comment section?
Oh, let's go with one more. Do we have time for one more, Tim?
Yeah, let's get off this negative guy and let's talk about something else.
Well, I love the negative guys because you know what? That means that we're doing awesome. USC's back because we got the stupidity and the hate. It's overflowing.
Really quickly though, speaking of comments, there's 2 ways. I don't think we have time for it this week, so we're going to push it till next week. But I appreciate. Thank you guys. I got more DMs in my from Twitter. Questions you guys might have. You guys can also, where Rick is getting these comments is after the video ends and it posts to YouTube, you can leave comments in the comment section. And I really would like you guys to do 3 things. If you haven't already, if you've enjoyed any part of this show, please hit the like button, because it really helps us to build the show. We're really trying to get to double. We have about 3,100 followers. We want to double that by the time the season starts to get to 6,000. The only way we're going to do that if we get our message out and the show out to more people. How we do that is with when you like it and you subscribe. And if you want to make sure you see all of our shows, we all have videos coming out all the time, just like we have for Deuce Robinson. Make sure you hit the notification bell, because that way you'll be notified anytime we put out a video. But one more thing that helps out, if you guys could leave a comment. I'd like you guys, who do you guys think? We just talked a lot about a lot of people coming in on the defense. Why don't you guys, if you could, after the show, leave us a comment. Tell us which breakout defensive player you think is going to happen, whether it's going to be a transfer or if it's going to be a player already on the team.
All right, let's go with one more question then. Thank you to James Mena. James asks and states, all energy seems to be about Tackett Curtis shining bright, but do not sleep on Madden. And absolutely not. And what James is referring to is Garrison Madden. He was part of that small 8-player high school recruiting class in 2022. And Garrison Madden is a linebacker from Georgia. And he needed to put on some weight. He's a developing player. And so I'm sure he was getting scout team reps last year. But no, absolutely. This kid has a lot of speed and athleticism and a large wingspan. They liked his measurables, his athleticism that stood out, but he needed to put on weight. So this is another developing player that, a lot of Trojans may have not heard about Garrison Madden, but he's in the same vernacular, the same grouping as what we talked about earlier, Devin Tompkins defensively, on the defensive line, and then also with Tobias Raymond. These are guys that were not highly recruited, but are identified as developing players. And so, yes, maybe Garrison Madden will get some reps this year. We'll have to see, but that is a name definitely to remember.
Yeah, not everybody goes to campus like Tackett Curtis. Already looked like he's at 3 years in a weight program. Some of these guys do take, there's late bloomers, right? One thing that I've always heard is that he is fast. When I think of Madden linebacker, this dude has speed for days. I remember, it's been a while since I've seen his game film, but that's for one thing I'm looking at. Once he learns the defense, at linebacker, it's really good to be able to, to analyze the play and get into the hole quickly. This guy also has the ability to get outside. How many times last year do we see linebackers slowly, getting and just losing the angle on guys, and those running backs taking advantage of slow linebackers? That's definitely not going to happen with Madden back there. We have a bunch of comments from the comment section. I want to honor their time. A lot of you guys, sorry, I'm not going to get to all of them. I actually started 15 of them. A lot of them are from the same people, but let's hit them really quick, Rick. If we can just do really quickly, just one quick comment for each one. We'll be here all day deep in every one of them. So we have Roger Dodger. Roger Dodger says triples are hard to run. Deuce is fast. I may have misspoke. It's not Deuce Robinson. That's the one setting the record for triples. That is oh my god, blank out his name.
Austin
Overn. Overn's the one doing the triples, but yes, I'm sure that Deuce is getting his fair share. He's just a bigger guy. I'm thinking probably more home runs. Mike Judge was his hero growing up, so I think he's gonna be jacking some home runs. Pardon?
Aaron Judge.
Aaron. Yeah. I think they said the wide receiver thing, so they didn't have to answer endless questions about Lincoln Riley doesn't play throw to tight ends. Again, I just think they see his skill set and they see him more as a Drake London, a kind of like an NFL and Evans kind of guy role instead of a tight end. Any thoughts, Rick?
Yeah, I think thanks a lot, LBC Rob, for the question. But absolutely what you'd said, Tim. I think they see his skill set more as a wide receiver and a red zone target.
An all over target. He's gonna be stretching that field. If you can imagine a linebacker trying to keep up with that dude, it's just gonna be scary to watch. Then we have a damn beast media. Peyton Woodard is a safety, 24 from St. John Bosco, my alma mater, proud alma mater, is a dog. He's a dog now, but what will he be in December? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Nothing's over in recruiting. I've had my heart broken so many times. I think they're going to battle for this kid all the way down the line. See, where did USC end up in 2003 after Deuce? I'm not sure what that question's about. Rick, do you got that one?
Yeah, in recruiting, where did the USC end up?
Oh, got you. So I think we ended up 8 in the high school recruiting and 6 overall. Is that correct? Check my numbers, Rick, because you're better at that than me.
I think it was 8th in high school recruiting. I think it was 7th in overall.
7th overall. The key here is again, we don't have AA Eugene telling us that they out recruited USC, because even though these numbers in the past couple of years have been like decimal points, they still say we out recruited you, which is just absurd. Doesn't really work that way in the real world. If we want to play that game, we out recruited you this year, but don't worry, that's going to happen.
USC had 22 commits, and Oregon had 29 high school commits, and still finished ahead of them.
Corey, thank you. Great question. Corey, if we have a top 30 defense, is that good enough to win a natty? I've said 50 we're in, and top 30 will be competing for it. I don't know. We're talking about teams. I don't think we have the depth yet. We still have, it's going to be hard to unseat Georgia, as hard as it is for me to say that. I've always enjoyed Georgia. So Georgia fans are almost, I kind of want to say, act like you've been there before, but really they haven't been there very often. So maybe it's that's something new for them and let them enjoy it. I knew a lot of obnoxious USC fans in 2003 and 2004 and 2005. So I'll let them have their fun. What do you think, Rick?
A top 30 defense definitely gets us into the college football playoff, and then anything can happen. But, injuries aside, everybody being healthy, Georgia is a tall order for this team to defeat just because of their depth on defense. And, that's what's key to win a national championship. But to qualify for the college football playoff, most definitely. And I think it would improve our chances versus having obviously the defense we had last year or a top 50 defense. If you can get top 30, then it's going to be a ball game.
Then we got a couple of questions on the special teams coach. We have thank you, HR Pixar, for being here. And the comment, USC has the best special teams coach in college football. Who is that again? And then we have tight end delay saying, what does SC need a special teams coach for? Not like bowl games are decided on kickoff returns. Oh, wait. Right. I mean, I get you. I get your point there. So special teams are important. USC is kind of unique. Well, not unique, but USC has an inside and outside receivers coach, and that's what's tying up. They're allocating that coaching position to that receivers extra receiver coach. Recently, there was a move to see if the analysts, they were trying to pass something through NCAA legislation where analysts would be allowed to be on the field and be present at practice. That would have been great, I think, for the special teams. That would have solved everything. Just hire an analyst to be there and to help out the guys that are covering. Remember, when you don't have a dedicated special teams coach, what you're doing is you're splitting coaches up to have different responsibilities for different aspects of the special teams. And hopefully they have some kind of background within it. Having that analyst would have been a great thing.
The way I answer that is we brought in a field goal kicker, Tyler Robles, to compete with our current field goal kicker. And we brought in a punter, I think a first team Pac-10 or Pac-12 punter, Zablisky, I think his name is, from Arizona State.
Zablicki, yeah. Zablicki.
Yeah. So that's how you manage your special teams.
And then Pedro Jaime, great contributor to the show. Pedro Jaime, he's saying that Lincoln has used tight ends historically. Yeah, that is the fact. A lot of things people don't realize is when they think about Lincoln Riley's offense. He has historically used tight ends. He has historically run the ball a lot more than people understand. And I think this year, now that he has the pieces in place that he wants, I think we're going to start seeing the full Riley offense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Lincoln Riley had tight ends at Oklahoma, most notably Mark Andrews. I just don't think he has the type of tight end he's looking for. Obviously, he's going to develop them. And like I'd mentioned earlier in the show, I think we can see that the tight end room is going to be more plentiful in the next 3 years.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say that I think last year, I'm not sure if Lake McCree had a handle enough on the offense and his size. He briefly talked about there was an interview with him, and he was talking about he's making that transition from a traditional tight end to the H-back position, and how the tight end is used in Riley's system. That's a growth curve on that. I think now he's gotten there. If you look at pictures of him, the dude looks big. He talks about he had a transition when he was in high school going from quarterback to tight end. So he definitely knows that he had work to do. He seems like obviously if it was a quarterback, we know he's a smart kid. He picked it up fast, but now it looks like he's grown into his body. So I think we're going to see a lot more from the tight ends.
And then also Ethan Ray, he couldn't stay healthy. Jude Wolf, he's had injury problems as well. Those were two other tight ends in the tight end room. And then don't forget Malcolm Epps, who was a transfer from Texas. He was in his second year. And for whatever reason, it was a surprise, but he entered the transfer portal. So just he just didn't have the numbers possibly for Lincoln Riley to run his typical tight end offense with what we had currently at tight end. But again, it's going to be developing moving forward.
Great show. This is a marathon show for us. We usually try to wrap up within an hour to an hour and 15. We're already running about an hour and 40. So one last comment. Sorry, let me get this. I do want to honor it. We had Zombie saying Damani Jackson is going to have a huge breakout season. And again, what I'd like you guys to do, please, once we end the show, if you guys could go ahead into the comment section, we will be featuring. If you have questions for next week that you want us to talk about, you can either DM us on Twitter. These are our Twitter accounts below. I'm at Trojan Conquest. Rick is at LBC Trojan. Go ahead and leave us messages. Again, those of you guys that left me questions this week, I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to them. We will add them to next week's show. If you want to have a question for us, you could also leave them in the comments of this show when it goes live on YouTube, and we will address all those questions as well. Anything else, Rick?
I'm waiting to see Damani Jackson and Zion Branch. Looking forward to seeing those two guys getting on the field. I want to see maybe some Romello Height as well. So looking forward to the 2023 USC defense.
Yes, I agree. So hit us up in the comments. Tell us who you think. If you agree with Rick, or if you think there's someone else that might be that breakout guy, go ahead and leave us a comment in the comment section. If you have questions for next week's show, please do that, or DM us at our Twitter. So thank you all again so much. We know that you guys can do anything this time. We know that if you're here, you're not casual Trojan fans. You are diehards, either diehard college football fans or diehard Trojan fans. We appreciate you guys so much. You guys are really helping to grow the show. Our numbers are increasing. We are getting more and more subscribers. Please help us to get to that 6,000 by talking to your friends, letting them know where we are, what we're about. And we can't wait to see you guys next week. So for Rick, I'm Tim. You guys all fight on. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Thank you.